All right, so we're joined all the way from Washington, D.C. by the founder of K'ept Health, Sheena Franklin. We thank you so much for taking some time for us today. This is our entrepreneurship class here at Velma Jackson High School. I've got a room full here with me, and we're recording this for all of our friends in Madison County schools, Madison Central High School, Ridgeland High School, Germantown High School, the Academic Option Center, and our YouTube channel. So thank you for fitting this in your schedule today.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to be here. So I normally don't talk on entrepreneurship unless I'm talking to students, either high school or college. So this is my jam. I'm excited to be here.
Love it. Now, obviously, we want to talk about K'ept Health and the cool concept you have and how you've really put together dermatology and AI and meshed that. But first, let's hear a little bit about your background. You went to Clark Atlanta University, the amazing HBCU there in the Atlanta Triad, and then went to grad school at a PWI. So, just tell us about your educational background and your different degrees.
Yeah, so I have to start my HBUC experience by going back to high school. So I actually grew up in a very predominantly white state. I grew up in Colorado, Denver, and fortunately, I had a really great basketball coach. So he actually went to Clark, and so every year he would make it his mission to make sure that he brought in graduates from different HBCUs. And so that was like my first touch point. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna go there, cross fingers, and luckily I got in. So I love going to school in Atlanta. It was a great experience for me. And then after that, because I had got really involved in politics at the time, even though when I went to college, I thought I was going to be like a sports agent or an attorney for athletes because I played basketball. But so once I got involved in politics, um, the natural place to go was DC. So, and I was like, I gotta go to like grad school. I gotta do something. And so I ended up going to GW, which is a PWI. So, yeah.
Yeah, George Washington University, the uh, great school there in Washington D.C. But that's so cool because you went to a great HBCU and a great PWI. Now, as these kids are in high school, I've got several seniors and sophomores with me here today.
Hmm.
As they start making decisions for their steps after high school, I like asking this question of people that went to HBCU and PWI because they both offer great aspects. Um, why is it so good to have that combination of an HBCU and a PWI?
Yeah, I would say, going into college when I was 17, 18, right? You think you know everything, but you're still a little bit young as well. And it was just a really grounding experience, right? So going to an HBUC as undergrad, I didn't have to deal with the other issues that you normally have to do at a PWI, right? So it was less about my background, my grades, who I was. It was just about finding the people who were like me. So whether I was like, you're into comics or sci-fi, or you're an athlete, or you're in the arts, or you can find your group and really learn about yourself at the same time. And then the HBCU was a good preparation for me to go to a PWI, especially in grad school, right? So it was about enhancing what I already knew. And by going into grad school, I was more successful because I was already grounded and not necessarily what I wanted to do, right? Like sometimes it doesn't always happen that way, but just grounded in what I felt was my North Star. Like I felt like I could use my voice, be an advocate. Teachers used to tell me, be quiet, you talk too much, like that's not your issue. Don't fight for other people. So now I'm like, okay, now I can use it as an adult in a productive way and then figure out the rest later.
Yeah, and I actually, when I was an undergrad in 2004 or three, I went to a conference at Clark Atlanta. So I've actually been on the campus, and it's a really cool, the Atlanta Triad there with Morehouse, Spelman, and Clark
Mhm.
Atlanta, all the great things they do. So if anybody considering an HBCU, three great ones right there in downtown Atlanta. Now, you spent almost 20 years as a healthcare lobbyist working with government relations. So just talk about what that is and how that led to you
Yeah.
starting a company because it's such a cool concept.
Yeah, so I'm sure a lot of the folks listening to us, so government relations is also known as a lobbyist, right? I think people have this conception of what lobbyist is. So basically, my career was really focused in healthcare. And so you can work for different entities. So you can work for big corporations, you can work for nonprofits, you can work for associations that represent physicians, for example. So for myself, I worked for different associations, and then I ended up, my last job was representing Walgreens. So what I did was I would take our core issues, I would report, and so sometimes it's like the boring tax business stuff, right? And then it's the interesting stuff like data or retail and pharmaceutical drugs. And this was the time where you had a lot with opioids and the DEA and being sued. Like, so it was like all interesting stuff. And so you take the issues that are important to the company and then you present them to members of Congress. And what people don't know is we have to make sure that what we're promoting ties back to their constituents in their district, right? So, and it's not just healthcare issues for like your grandma or your mom, but it's for children as well, making sure that children have access to care. Sometimes that's, Medicaid and Medicare, or just making sure that your doctor isn't trying to charge you like crazy amounts for copays.
Yeah, and after a long time doing that, you saw there was a need. You saw that there was a disparity in minority women with skincare, and you have come up with this incredible concept of kept health, which ties together AI, UX, dermatology, and it's just really,
Gender.
really
Yeah.
interesting. I've watched several videos about it, but I was trying to explain it to the kids, but I was like, I think she can explain it better than I can. So just tell us where this idea came from, because obviously you don't have a degree in anything tech, but this is a tech-based
Mm-mm.
company and it really meets the need for a huge disparity in in AI programming and I know we talked before we started recording about there's been a book about it and it's not that the people designing the AI are evil or racist, but they just don't have the background. They don't have the knowledge, and that's why we need more diversity in AI so we can bring more perspectives to the table. But how did this concept come about?
Yeah, so when I was at Walgreens, there was a data breach for one of our competitors. And I remember sitting in the hearing room and they started talking about data, right? So we were talking about data privacy. And then they started talking about how data was biased. And that was like the spark. And so I started the company before I left. So originally it was just to be about skin health because I said, I'm done with healthcare. I want no more parts of it. But once we launched what's called like our minimal viable product, where we go out and test it with different women, I started to find that there was these huge gaps when it came to AI and the data, right? And I knew just from my experience working and talking to other physicians that a lot of physicians use what's happening on our hair, body, and skin to make their diagnosis for another disease that we have, right? So, and then I was like, oh, that's great. We can do that. And then when I went to find this data, like it wasn't there, right? So, and then over time, I started to notice more gaps, like when it came to women. So I was like, okay, so let's restructure. Let's be a health equity data company that then uses teledermatology to build better products, not just for ourselves, but other people in the healthcare industry. Because, like you said, it's not because a lot of the time, developers or executives are racist or sexist. It's a problem within the system. Like we've been taught to ignore how women experience healthcare, how other minorities experience healthcare. It's just embedded in what we do.
Yeah, and then I was listening to one of the interviews you gave at a summit, and you were talking about how the product works, and it was extremely interesting because you said it uses facial recognition, AI tools to see a person's skin no matter what tone it is, no matter what structure, and it's able to find things and find that person resources in order to better take care of their skin because look, there's skin diseases that a lot of people don't know about that people deal with, and to make it easier on not only their mental health but also their appearance.
Yeah, and you're spot on. So there's nothing I would change about that. The only other thing that I would add to that is we also use dermatology for preventative health, right? So say, for example, if you have lots of rashes, especially if they present in particular patterns. It could be early signs of lupus, right? Or if you have real velvety dark patches, that's a sign of diabetes, right? So we use it to do all these different things. And then also when you're going through chemotherapy or you may have a particular medication, then that impacts your skin. So we use AI to do that. And then knowing that
Wow.
technology will never replace like in-person care, then we make sure to connect you with resources in your city
Yes.
that you can continue that care, right? And so then we try to keep it cost effective so that regardless of what your income looks like, you can at least have a first layer of care.
Yeah. Now, obviously, like we said, your degrees are not in anything tech related. So, how does somebody without a tech background get into the tech and AI space, especially as a tech AI startup?
Yeah. So I would say what really gives me advantage is my healthcare experience, right?
Yeah.
So I know how healthcare works. I know where the gaps are. But like with anything, when you're a curious person, you read a lot, watch a lot of YouTube videos, I went to events in DC, not knowing anybody, just trying to figure out what's an app, what's a platform, what's this, what is that? And then once you start and you get in it, you can learn more. And then you have to realize your own limits, right? Like, I'm not a data person. I didn't go to school for engineering, right? But I can learn just enough to cause a problem. So then I go out and I hire and I partner with and I collaborate with individuals who are experts in that area, or, hosting roundtables where I bring all these experts together and we can just jam out and trying to figure out how can we solve this problem and help each other.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned that because one thing I always like talking about is on Monday, all this class is going to give a presentation about different entrepreneurs. And it's not meant to, to be, I'm not trying to put them on the spot or make them scared, but that speaking and articulating and selling is such an important skill when it comes to doing business. Even if you don't want to be an entrepreneur, to be a great employee, that really
Hmm.
takes a lot of great communication skill. And you talked about networking, you talked about finding people to collaborate with. So, how important is it to learn how to speak and to get comfortable speaking? Now, me and you have both spoken at big events, so obviously we're not nervous speaking in large groups. That's fine. But a lot of people are, but it's still, you've got to learn that face to face communication. To be able to walk in a room and introduce yourself and say, hey, here's what I have. Here's why you need to use it.
Hmm.
Here's how we can help each other. So, why are those skills so important to develop in high school before you take your next steps?
Because in high school, it's the foundation, right? And with anything, you just get better with practice. You get more confident, right? It's not even going to be something that you will recognize in high school or even in college. But by the time you get to college, you're gonna have like an English professor or some professor who's gonna make you get up and speak. Like I just had a flashback to when I was in college and I was terrified, like in my first speaking class, right? But it just gets you more confident, right? And then there's also this funny thing that happens when you not just talk to yourself and you're talking to other people, you hear what you're saying, right? And your brain will be like, oh, I can go back and possibly change that, right? And then you also learn that this is hard for me to learn, and I still have to remind myself is even though I'm saying something that I think I'm saying, that might not be what someone else is hearing,
Yeah.
not because I'm wrong or they're wrong. It's just the way that our minds work. So it teaches you to be more patient with yourself and others and learn how to communicate back and forth.
Man, I'm telling you, and it is such an overlooked skill. And I had a guest yesterday that was talking about, at the end of the day, you've got to learn how to sell things because you can have a great product, you can have great customer service, you can put in all the hard work, but at the end of the day, if you're going to make any type of money, a
Hmm.
sale has to be made. So you've got to sell people on why you're the best and why their product can help them. Well, I do have some questions from the students, and I like
Okay.
these, and I love this first one because I love asking this
Okay.
question myself. I'm glad he's asking it. This is Terry Thompson. He's in 12th grade, one of our football players here at Velma Jackson. And he asked, what is the main thing you've had to sacrifice or the hardest thing you've had to learn while creating your business?
Those are two. That's a twofer, actually, right? So I think the main thing that I had to sacrifice, probably which I didn't know, which is kind of
There you
ironic,
go.
is my health, right? Um, by you wake up one day and you're like, I haven't been to the dentist in 2 years. I can't see because I haven't, gone to the doctor. And it's not like a purposeful thing of a sacrifice because you find something that you enjoy so much, right? That you're just constantly doing 24 hours, 24 hours, 24 hours, and you're not realizing you're making that sacrifice of your own self. I know typically people will say family, kids, husbands. I don't have a husband, I don't have kids. So I'm probably dialed in way too much, right? So that would be like that. And the biggest lesson that I had to learn was, oh my gosh, this is probably gonna be a little more personal, is that um showing up a lot of times as a Black person, but specifically as a Black woman, because that's my lived experience, is that people are not going to see what you bring to the table. All they're going to see is that you're a Black woman, and they're probably going to go off of some type of stereotype. Not everybody, but in business, that's just the way it is. And so I had to figure out a way to say, you know what? I'm still going to be confident. If you don't want to work with me, fine. We keep, I probably don't want to work with you anyway. Right. So like that's the biggest thing of always making sure that you remain confident in yourself and connected to some type of grounding um, source.
Yeah, and that's a great segue to this question because this is Robert Branson, also a senior, also a football player, and he asked,
Okay.
after being an employee for so long, did you feel it was more stressful being your own employer than working for someone else?
No. And I will tell you why. I think when you are an entrepreneur, right? Um, you tend to always buck the system, right? And you feel like I never really fit in, right? And so when you leave to do your own thing, it's a sense of autonomy and freedom, right? That's why I would say not for me, it wasn't, right?
Yeah, and that autonomy and freedom is a huge, huge pro of entrepreneurship, but you just cannot get away from the organizational and time management aspect of it.
For
Because if you can
sure.
master that, yeah, you can have that autonomy. But if you're a person that has to be given directions, which is fine, employers want to hire employees that think like entrepreneurs. But if
Mhm.
you are a person that needs to be told what to do, entrepreneurship full time may not be the best path for you. So, great
Yeah,
point.
and let me jump in, and I'm glad you said that because everybody's not going to be an entrepreneur, right? So you shouldn't force yourself to be an entrepreneur. And then also to realize there's different types of businesses and different types of being an entrepreneur. Like everybody doesn't have to be a tech company, right? You could be an entrepreneur, I don't know, and you want to, since we're talking about football players, when you graduate, you may want to be a coach. You may want to start a camp, right? That doesn't require you to make the same level of sacrifices if you want to sell $1 billion company.
Absolutely. This is Caden Williams, also football player. He's in 10th grade. Really interested in getting into the tech field. But he
Uh-huh.
asked, at what moment in life did you know this was the right decision?
Um, when before I quit my job, I was in a parking lot in tears because I didn't want to go in. Right? Like I think some people don't realize you can get a fancy title, the great salary, right? Have the fancy car, but if you're not happy, like you're a grown person crying to go into your employer, like it's time to move on. And then once I moved on, I felt a lot more peace. Now there's stress, but there's still peace, and you can't buy peace regardless of what you're doing.
Absolutely. I'm with you on that. You can't put a dollar sign on peace of mind. This is Jaden
Mm-mm.
Latiker. He's in 12th grade. And he asked, what has been the most rewarding part of being an entrepreneur?
Mm, I would say for me is when I'm able to see the light bulb go off with women, because that's a market I really work with, when they tell me about some of the horrible comments or experiences they have with a healthcare professional. And I mean, this is across races, age, backgrounds, and giving them the tools to say, well, this is how you handle a conversation with that healthcare provider, right? And even though I think sometimes we get scared using digital health apps, but find an app that addresses the symptoms or conditions that you have and use that data as your advocating tool, right? To go into your doctor. That's the most rewarding when I can help women navigate healthcare a lot better.
That's awesome. All right, I got time for one more. This is Shirai Luckett. He's in 10th grade, really interested in getting a transportation company started. And he asked,
Hmm.
do you see yourself or your company expanding into any other areas than what you're in now?
Oh, good question. So I'm still in healthcare, right? So K'ept Health does a lot with AI and data, but now I've started to help other executives like NGOs help them understand trends in healthcare, right? So that's like advisory, but not really like advisory. I can write. I was an English major. I wrote, policies, legislation. So I create white papers for them to help them understand how to navigate, right? So it's a little different, right? And I think that's also a great question because transportation is huge, right? And there's different sectors within transportation. You might be over here and then notice, oh, there's a white space where I connect what I'm doing to over here, right? Or you may start in this place, get it to a point, you don't even need to run it anymore. You have a team, you say, oh, I can go over here and do something else in transportation. So I think that's a big thinker question. I think that's a great question.
That's awesome. Well, we're almost out of time, and we thank you so much for taking some time for us. But a couple things before we go. Kept.health is your website.
Yep.
I want to make sure I got that right. And all your social media is on there. Really cool
Yep.
stuff. There's all kind of YouTube clips of you talking about your passion for this and just how you tie in with healthcare. But um, as we wrap up, as you talked about, when a minority comes into a space where there's not a lot of people that look like them, or a woman comes in and they're the only woman in the room. Why is it so important that these kids now learn to be confident and learn to use their intellect and their skill to prove that they belong no matter what room they're in?
Yeah. So one, I don't know, I don't know if it's about proving that you belong. It's like going once you get skills, we talked about what did we just talk about? We talked about what industry you want to go in, how to effectively communicate, right? When you go on those spaces, you are able to walk in there what your confidence, knowing I know what I know, and I know I'm no, I can't cuss, but I know I'm that one, right? So I'm not gonna prove to you how good I am. I'm gonna show you what you lose by not choosing me, by not betting on me. I'm gonna show you what you're gonna lose, right? So kind of turning the narrative around and placing the onus on them versus on you. That's the key point of walking into those spaces like that.
Absolutely. Well, again, we thank you so much for joining us. Just such a cool business concept you have, and really, really going to change the game for so many women, not only in the DMV, but all over the country. So, again, we thank you so
Yep.
much for joining us. Sheena Franklin, founder of Kept Health, all the way from Washington, D.C. We thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
I'll talk to you soon, buddy.
All right.
See ya.